Welcome to Late Night Radio, the radio that rocks, the radio that brings you all the hits. Not really, not really, except my voice has completely blown. I think it's 'cause my chest got a bit cold in the water yesterday. But hell's bells, we gotta keep moving forward, right? Um, there's only one way to go, that's for sure. How are you? How you doing out there? Is it okay? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Have you figured it out yet? Have you? Have you put two and two together yet? Have you looked around at what is happening yet? Have you asked yourself some important questions yet? Or are you still procrastinating? Because if you are, I understand. Because I am the king of procrastination. I will put things off and put things off and put things off. I would postpone my life, I think, if that were possible to a certain extent. But I don't mean that in a sort of negative way. It's just about organization. It's just about planning. It's just about mindset. It's just about taking those little steps. I'm as guilty as the next person of not getting things done. The number of times I've sat in front of my computer and thought, I really should record something, and just sat and stared at the screen like some entranced zombie waiting for some divine intervention. Of course, it didn't come. You've got to have some level of get up and go. One of the ways around this that I've discovered at least is giving yourself things to look forward to, giving yourself little rewards. And the rewards don't have to be negative things. And by negative things, I mean like, oh, give myself a big ice cream because I did my 30 minutes of cardio today or whatever. It doesn't have to be stuff that's gonna have a negative effect, if you know what I mean, because the ice cream is kind of offsetting the cardio. You're not really getting the full benefit of doing the exercise there. You have to live holistically rather than against yourself, because a lot of us live against ourselves. A lot of us are fighting ourselves, who we are, what we were, who we want to become, the voices in our head. I figure that everybody has multiple voices within their head telling them where to go, what to do, how to think. That's what I figure. But only one of those voices is you, and you have to listen carefully. You have to take your time, because it's there. It's there, because we know, looking back in hindsight, it's obvious, right? But then again, as I pointed out with my memes today, if you anchor yourself completely in the past, then you drown in the present. You're not able to live in the moment. So recognize the past, but move on. Let it go, and then you can flow. The more you think about what you're going to say, the less you say, in general. The greatest person, or the greatest way to communicate is simply to be true to you and allow others to experience that, really. Because everybody's life has multiple narratives, playing out at the same time. You could go in many different directions. There's not just one way to do things. There's your way, that's true, but there's not just one way, and every day is a connection of crossroads where you have a choice. Like, which way will I go? What time will I get up? What time will I go to sleep? Will I hit the snooze button? Should I call these people? Should I write that mail? Should I do that research? Should I read that page? Should I go the extra mile? You know, one of the things about having kids, gotta get my posture right. One of the one of the things about having kids is that you realize that you in general do less when you live for yourself. It's not wrong to live for yourself. It's not wrong to be selfish in the sense of looking after yourself. But when you have kids, you suddenly realize you are both important and not important at the same time. You got to be there for them. You got to set a good example. But you tend to do more when you live for other people, when you help other people, when you contribute to their life, their lifestyle, their way of living. That's why I recommend everybody has as many kids as possible. Oh, but what about the money? And kids are expensive. You know, you'll work it out. You'll work it out because you have to work it out. You'll work it out because there'll be no other way. You don't even know what solutions you're going to find until you really challenge yourself, until you do that. And part of the challenge is, you know, bringing life to life, right? A lot of people childless now. What's going to happen when do you see how it all clicks in together? There's people not having kids. What's going to happen when they get older is they're going to tend to feel useless because they're not going to have their children or their grandchildren's lives to feed into, and they're not going to have the grandchildren feeding into them because just like just like when people get a dog, that their life is kind of invigorated with energy. When you have grandchildren, you suddenly have something else to live for, something else that you want to see. You want to see the kids grow up. You want to see the first football match or dance performance. You want to see the struggles of the teenage years and be there to help out. You want to see them finish their schooling. You want to see them be successful. You want to see them get married, right? You want to see all of these things come together. And if you don't have kids, then you 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 flick a switch on that opportunity and just turn out the lights, and it's not there, and then you wonder what you have to live for except um, waiting for another day that's going to be the same, which is what happens in so many people's lives. And it's the grandkids that bring in these differences, and the fact that your kids will probably, if you have more kids, they will have more kids, and you know the tree kind of branches out, and a whole new avenue of life opens up, right? Um, and if you're a good person, right? If you're out there and you're a good person, you know you're a good person, then you know that you're doing the right thing, right? You're definitely doing the right thing. So my name's G. I represent the Academy, and today we're gonna flick through some of the Facebook stories. Um, while we still have a Facebook, um, or until we have a better platform that we build. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the world in and around about the issues of the problems with the LOCKDOWN right now. Right now. The lockdowns got you locked up. It's all a game. It's all about the mindset and how you frame the ideas. Now, Part of the system of control is the financial system. Um, uh, I could talk a bit about where money comes from and how it started, and there's a lot of great documentaries out there. Start with Money as Debt. That's a great documentary. A lot of great documentaries about economies and how they grow, um, how the currencies were removed from certain standards. How did you know that The Wizard of Oz is in fact based on the concept of financial principles? It's really interesting. Um, there's interesting history about the challenges that governments had. Um, but the point I want to make here is about the element of finance that is fantasy. Finance that is fantasy. Money. It's interesting. Like you can have like a gold coin, right? And you can go into a shop and you can say, okay, I'd like to exchange this gold coin for that book or that magazine or that packet of biscuits or whatever, and people say, no, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take that gold coin because I don't recognize that as an official currency. And the gold coin could be, it could be worth £100. But you give them like a £5 note, and wow, right, they're happy with it, and that's kind of crazy because if you went into the shop with some French money or some German money or some Czech money or some Russian money, they wouldn't accept it. So it's acceptable in one place, but not another, which shows that it's kind of an artificial construct that we're born into, this idea of money. And it gets even weirder if you are where I am in the north of Scotland, where you you look at England and you realize there's a Bank of England, and the Bank of England issues currency, money, notes, and the language is very important. Currency, a current. Um, a lot of the language relative to money is related to the concept of water. And as far as I can tell from history, this is because water, excuse me, have a quick drink of my coffee. Water was the one of the main trading currencies of the cultures of North Africa thousands of years ago. That if you worked for the pharaoh, then you were allocated a certain amount of water that you could use on your land, and then so you could grow your crops and be successful. So it was basically how you lived and died. And so this is why we have the flow of money. This is why we have currency. This is why we have river banks, two banks at each side. They control the direction. This is why we talk about being afloat, and there's a lot more, and it's also an energy as well. That's why we say it has value, because there's a relationship to energy there as well. But it's all kind of a fantasy. It's all kind of artificial. It only ever means what you're told that it means, or in essence, what you can make people believe that it means, right? So if you can make people believe it has value, then people become interested in it. They'll collect it, they'll use it, they'll trade it, they'll trust it. So England has this one bank, and Scotland has three, right? Scotland has three banks producing money. It has the Royal Bank of Scotland, it has the Bank of Scotland, and it has the Clydesdale Bank, each producing their different notes. So that's pretty unique, right? So how is that even possible? But it gets even stranger because what happens is, if you look at the actual notes themselves, and you get an English banknote, have a look at it, and it'll say £10. Now a pound is a weight, but it won't tell you 10. Originally, it had an equivalent weight of silver or gold or some other precious metal, um, and over time, that concept has slowly been erased from the principle, and purposely, of course, so that eventually you can just print as much of the paper as you want, and it doesn't really matter. And if you've seen the euros, right? At least you know the Bank of at least you know the Bank of England backs the English money and that it's signed by somebody, right? I mean, it doesn't even say who the signature is on the euro note. I mean, that's monopoly money. That's the most ridiculous currency in human history. Um, and what's it backed by? And is there any limit to how much they can print? It's a great trick. It's a great trick if you can pull it off. Anyway, the English notes, it just says £10. It doesn't say £10 of what? Because you're supposed to, because it says promise to pay the bearer um, by demand or on demand at the office of, which means you can go to the office and you should be able to exchange the paper for a weight of something of real value. Of course, if you actually go to the bank and do that, they'll laugh at you because the people in the bank have been trained to do that. Um, Sadly, they don't really understand the history because we're not taught the history. You have to go and unencode and decipher it for yourself. So you can go and try and exchange the money, but you won't get anything for it. Now, if you look at the Scottish notes, it says on the Scottish notes, pounds sterling. Now, what is sterling? Sterling is a weight of silver. And it says promise to pay the bearer on demand, usually at the Edinburgh office, signed by somebody, certain weight in silver. So, theoretically, it actually has value, whereas many currencies don't. But it's all theory, because it's all about whatever you think is real, you know, and that's the trick, making people believe that something of no value has value, making people believe that the paper is equivalent to some product or some level of production. Really, really, really interesting. And it's taken hundreds, maybe thousands of years to train us in understanding this. And now it's not even like a real sort of physical value because we're working with all these digital currencies. It's just zeros and ones in a machine somewhere. What a wild reality that is. And anyway, there's many ways to explain and uh, study the economics. You can just argue, well, you know, it works, so we might as well just use it, and that's fair enough. But here's something for you to think about. Anyway, this is so I was reading a post on LinkedIn, and I really do have to talk to you about LinkedIn someday, because of what I see going on in the threads and behind the scenes there. But it's not important right now, but it will be important in the future. So somebody was writing on LinkedIn, and what I did was I took their piece of writing and I rewrote it in a way that made sense to me. And hopefully if it makes sense to me, it'll make sense to you. So this is our economic system simplified. So, because if you want to explain it to kids, kids, kids usually get it faster than adults, actually. Kids usually get it faster than adults. And the point of this is to just reinforce the nonsense that we call our financial system. Here we go. Fred borrowed money to buy a bike. The bank gave the money to him, and he bought the bike from the company he worked for. And the money went to the company or the factory. But the loan also became a bank asset. The bank owned the loan taken out by Fred. The bank also controlled the money the factory had deposited in the bank. So the money was now in at least two places. It was an asset owned by the bank, and it was physically owned by the factory, which probably held the money in the bank. Fred, of course, was in deficit and working to pay off his debtor. The factory used the money in their account to buy materials and labor to make more bikes, and so money moved accounts. Some of it went to Fred in wages, paid into the bank, some of it went to pay off the loan. So the same money was now in lots of places at once. And Fred was basically using the money he had borrowed from the bank, which was given to him out of the factory's bank deposits, to buy a bike from the factory. The bank also invests some of its deposits, as stagnant funds don't usually grow. Yeah, the money doesn't stay there, It doesn't stay in one place. The factory was in effect buying a bike from themselves for Fred. The bank acted as creditor and middleman. The bank charged Fred interest and paid some small part of that interest to the factory. Then, for whatever reason, the market slowed down. Now, lots of workers were made redundant. The bank loses its regular deposits, the factory closes, and the bank is in trouble because it no longer has enough money to pay all its depositors. So everyone panics and the bank fails, unless bailed out by a bigger fish using the same principles. Money either magically reappears or disappears back to the nowhere that it came from. And that is the magical system that we have. That is the 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 magic, the majesty, his majesty, her majesty, the magistrate's court. It's all a game, ladies and gentlemen. It's all a game. Anyway, moving on. If you're following the video version, you'll get some images to go with the blurb. The original pirates. The system is the original pirates. You wonder, if you look back through history, you had this idea that the pirates were the people fighting against the government. But if you look back, you actually discover that the pirates were sort of mercenary groups paid for through intermediary companies like the East India Trade Company. But they were basically working for the governments, not against them. It's history is interesting. Go and look into history. It's really interesting. The we're sort of given a certain picture of history. Like it's always the the banks were always the people that were robbed, right? In the films, all the money was stolen from the bank. Oh my gosh, stolen from the bank. But then, the banks are insured, and we're kind of meant to feel a bit sorry for the bank. But banks have far more control than they would let people know. In fact, I once had a conversation with a lawyer about the power of banks and loans. And once you have borrowed money from a bank, you're in debt, and you can be in debt forever, right? And it's a way of control. Debt is a great way to control people. Indentured servitude did not disappear. It just transformed into something less visible, almost invisible. Anyway, the pirates, they take what they can and give nothing back. So here's a story about statistics relating to the covert identification that we are all subject to right now. According to the article, we ran a simple one, and I'll get to who wrote the article in a second. If you want it, it's a Wall Street Journal opinion column. Do lockdowns save many lives? In most places, the data says no. So according to the article, we ran a simple one variable correlation of deaths per million and days to shut down, which ranged from minus 10 days, some states shut down before any sign of COVID-19, to 35 days for South Dakota, one of the 7 states with limited or no shutdown. The correlation coefficient was 5.5%, so low that the engineers I used to employ would have summarized it as no correlation at all and moved on to find the real cause of the problem. The trend line sloped downward. States that delayed more tended to have lower death rates, but that's also a meaningless result due to the low correlation coefficient. How did the Swedes do? They suffered 80 deaths per million 21 days after crossing the 1 per million threshold level. With 10 million people, Sweden's death rate without a shutdown and massive unemployment is lower than that of the 7 hardest hit US states. Those states are Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Louisiana, Connecticut, Michigan, New Jersey and New York, all of which, except Louisiana, shut down in 3 days or less. Despite stories about high death rates, Sweden's is in the middle of the pack in Europe, comparable to France, better than Italy, Spain and the UK, and worse than Finland, Denmark and Norway. Older people, and this is the key, older people in care homes accounted for half of Sweden's deaths. That's what's happening, guys. That's what's happening. They're taking out the older generation. They're taking out the older generation. Crazy, huh? Recommendation. If you want more information about what's happening, check out londonreal.tv. Interview Unmasking the Lies with Brian Rose and Dr. Kaufman. Great discussion. You'll find it on the London Real site. If you are following my other work, you'll know that I put out interviews with local businesses where they share some of their secrets, and recently did an interview with Murray Chamber of Commerce where they talked about the benefits available for businesses through the crisis, a very important lifeline for a lot of local enterprises. Note to self, another thing that you should watch, that's Melissa and is it Aaron? They have TrueStream Media. TrueStream Media, check them out. YouTube.com on BitChute. Check out their latest video, Technological Resurrection. They cover a lot of the documents related to the social planning aspects of what is happening right now. Hopefully my voice is going to hold up through this. Hopefully. You never know. So I also posted a series of, you find this on my YouTube, a series of infographics pointing out the statistics related to problems with COVID and its relationship to other diseases. I'm not going to go over all of the graphs here today because I want to talk to you about a lot of different subjects, and I could just talk about the graphs for days and days and days and days and days and days and days. You study it for yourself, draw your own conclusions. That's the best way to look at it, I think. The second infographic I posted was the history of pandemics, where you can see where COVID fits in world history. At least 2 weeks ago it wasn't even visible on the chart, so that shows you that media can, if allowed to, blow things out of all proportion. The other thing that's happening right now, a lot of posts are being deleted from the NET, disappearing down the memory hole of time. Somebody somewhere has decided that you as an adult can't decide for yourself, so we have to decide for you. Now there was a post about, what was it about? It was about, do you want to hear a joke about Bob Dylan? Hey, it's interesting, Bob Dylan, didn't he just like have his first #1 single ever, and isn't he like 100 years old or something? Crazy that he's even still alive. It's wild. Nothing wilder than reality. Bob Dylan was once asked, what are your songs about? Because he embraced a lot of complex topics. And he said, some of them are about 5 minutes, some of them are about 7, some are a bit shorter. I like that. Anyway, the post was about doctors who have been speaking out. Interesting how some doctors are allowed to speak and some are not. How some are promoted and some are ignored. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So this is a very serious story about how doctors in New York City have been murdering their patients. This is according to eyewitness reports from several doctors who wouldn't go on camera but would actually write statements for other people to read. And it's very believable, and it's very suspicious that the videos are getting deleted from the internet. Um, you can contact me if you want more information about it. Because it's disappearing from all platforms. It's not going to disappear completely because the good white hats out there are making copies of stuff. So thank you very much for doing that. And we need to do this to combat the disappearance of uh, information which is counter to the narrative that we're being given. Um, it's amazing to see what you are not allowed to criticize. In fact, that's how you learn who is in control. Um, if you want to find out who's in control, find out who you can't criticize. That pretty much points you in the right direction. Um, but there's no need for us to think for ourselves anymore because system's going to think for us. Thank you to Susanna who pointed out that the post had been removed from the internet. We need to keep us. We all need to keep ourselves in check right now. So let me scoot past the music of my childhood, which I reposted last night because sometimes it ages very well. Sometimes it's still as good as it was, and then sometimes you go back and listen to what you listened to when you were young, and you're like, oh my God, oh, did I really like that? Hmm. It's just interesting. I had a couple of conversations about this with friends, and even where I still like some of the music from my childhood, other people will be like, "Oh my God, I can't listen to that anymore." It's interesting. I wonder if there are deeper psychological reasons for that, or if people just grow up and grow out of it. Yeah. So interesting. Anyway, I still like to listen to a lot of that stuff. Stuff I missed as well. We're so blessed to live in this technological era where we can access certain elements of information, and like you're able to go back and find music by artists that was popular when you were younger, but you didn't appreciate it at the time. Yeah, because you have different experiences, and as you grow up, you learn more about the nuances of life. I remember being a kid watching the film Local Hero, Scottish-based film about an oil man from somewhere in the USA who comes to a little Scottish village and tries to fit in. Yeah. I remember watching it when I was a kid and thinking, this is the most boring film I have ever seen in my life. And then I watched it as an adult and um, thought it was fantastic. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah, if you want to, if you want to smile, check out Local Hero. Great soundtrack as well. Anyway, UK begins to limit postal service. And I got this from a local Facebook page. I didn't see it in the mainstream news anywhere. I didn't see anybody posting it. I don't even follow the mainstream news. I have no idea what's going on out there, um, except for my communication with people. I just I try to live within my own world. I try to live within my own thoughts. I try to live within my own ideas and try not to let myself get influenced too much by everything that's going on. It's quite hard to do right now, but well worth the effort. Trust me. So and this they're hacking the the powers that be are hacking away at the Tree of Liberty. They're hacking away right now. Yeah, the Postal Service is a vital institution in the whole concept of what freedoms we have or what little freedoms we have left. If we lose the Postal Service, well, that's kind of because Postal Service allowed us some level of privacy. It allowed us some level of human development in terms of the sharing of information. I mean, that's what's the intellectual cultures were boosted by the development of postal services, which were, of course, intelligence services as well at the beginning, but absolutely necessary for the development of culture. Anyway, what UK Postal Service has posted is we understand the importance of the postal service in keeping the UK connected at this time. We have also listened to our hard-working colleagues who have asked us to ease the additional burden on them if possible. As a result, we are making some temporary, it always starts as being temporary, changes to postal services. From the 2nd of May, we will temporarily no longer deliver letters on a Saturday. We will continue to provide a letter delivery service from Monday to Friday as normal, etc., etc. So slowly. Let's just reduce it by 1 day at the beginning. Hey, see where that goes. See where that goes. There's another topic that came up recently, which I don't really want to discuss right now because I want to give you more documentation on it. But it's the most frightening thing I think I've ever read, and yet not being shocked about it because I saw it coming. You know, and that's how the propaganda works, isn't it? When you finally get when the insane is finally placed in front of you, you're like, yeah, well, I saw that coming, and then you're not shocked by it, so you don't react to it anymore. That's how it works. Really, it is. So, I mean, if you want to be scared shitless, go and Google or Start Page or, use some um, non-tracking search engine. Go and Google the United Nations Guidelines for Sex Education by Age and look at the section for from 0 to 4 years. And if you can tell me that everything there is okay, then then I'd like to see you take a rocket to another planet that's very far away, because there's a whole agenda running around, going on in the background. I mean, I don't even want to talk about that whole subject, but there's what I disagree with, and then there's just shit that should not ever exist ever. Just go and read it. Because, if you've got kids in school, this is what the schools are following. They're following the United Nations guidelines. If you're a parent and you don't know what's happening in the schools will go back. And they'll be used as a way to collect information and control, as a way to command society. They will. Now, should I go through this or not? Well written, well presented, well done. A total overview of what has happened regarding the COVID crisis. I wonder what happens if I click on it. Will it give me a clearer image of the actual original post? I thought it would just give me the original post. Maybe they've removed it already. All I've got is a little bird in a circle spinning around in the middle of my screen, and it looks like that might be it. It's giving me the same incomplete picture again. Oh my gosh, that's tiny. I can't even read that myself on the screen. Here we go. Vicki Fisher wrote, replying to Lionel Media, regarding the present situation. This is quite long. It's going to take a couple of minutes to read it, but it's probably worthwhile. Answer to the question: yes, COVID-19 exists, but is indeed deadly. But listen to this: the 10 largest cities in the world, apart from New York City, are Tokyo, Dhaka, Mumbai, Cairo, Mexico City, Delhi, Beijing, Sao Paulo, Osaka, and Shanghai. They have a combined population of 231 million people between those cities. They have had a total of 930 COVID-19 deaths as of the 25th of April. Only 930. And considering the incentives for hospitals for putting COVID on the death certificate, the fact that there's extra cash payments involved, the fact that if you've got a respiratory infection or a pre-existing condition or a heart problem, then then you're gonna die from a cold anyway if it's serious enough, or if you're just old, right? That's well. Now consider this: the population of New York City is 8.3 million people and has had 12,000 plus COVID deaths. That's a death rate of 200 times that of the 10 largest cities mentioned above. How is that possible? 231 million people and only 930 deaths, yet New York City has 8.3 million with 12,000 deaths. And don't forget, New York has some of, if not the best medical care in the world. Really? Really? The best medical care in the world? Are you sure? Are you sure? Now, it's a great question. Why is the death rate higher? Misdiagnosis, bad care, deliberately bad care, which relates to previous videos I've talked about getting banned, where doctors actually say the treatments are wrong. And the other underlying possibility that that the city's actually been specifically targeted with the disease and virus. This is something not a lot of people have talked about, but it's something worth considering. Um, it could just be the fact that people are more ill within that area. It could be the fact that after September 2001 that there was a lot of pollution in there, a lot of people got sick. Yeah, a lot of factors. A lot of factors. Which one? I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's a confluence of those together. Doesn't change the outcome, but you can still mix and match, can't you? Here's a baffling comparison to ponder about. Tokyo is the world's largest and densest city. Population 9.27 million and has only 100 COVID deaths. That's right, 100. New York City. And it's crazy. I mean, you see the reports on the news that actually say millions are dying when they're not. I've got that in my feed as well. Like mainstream media saying millions of people are dying worldwide, and then people are repeating it because they actually believe it's true, even though they don't know anyone who's really died of it. And it's hard to prove because the patients are always isolated. You're not allowed anywhere near them. It's taken a lot of planning, this. It's taken a hell of a lot of planning to get all of these dominoes in a row. It didn't just happen like that. And don't think this is the end. The end is always just the beginning. So Tokyo is not and was not ever on lockdown. Yet New York City COVID-19 death rate is 250 times higher than Tokyo, and New York City has 1 million fewer people than Tokyo. And both cities were exposed to COVID-19 at the same time. Great points. Now consider the entire population of the world is 7.8 billion. 200,000 have died from coronavirus allegedly, supposedly, probably, maybe, maybe not. The US has 328 million people and 56,000 have died from coronavirus. 7 times the death rate compared to the rest of the world. It seems to have targeted people in that area for some bizarre reason. Yet 2/3 of the world was never on lockdown. 2/3 of the world. I mean, that's a wild statistic. When you realize that 65% of the world didn't lock down their populations. You think people tend to think it's the same everywhere. It's not. It's vitally different. I mean that vitally different everywhere. Anyway, as the source is worldatlas.com and who.int, and of course the principle is that none of this really makes sense if you go by the official narrative. Even consider the extremely high density country of India, population 1.3 billion, and it has only 886 total deaths. How is it possible for India's number to be so low, especially considering their numerous high density slums? It should have gone rampant, right? So what's that saying? Is that telling us that it's not airborne? Hmm? Maybe, maybe. Is it possible that the US figures are skewed? You may find it interesting to know that massive financial incentive exists for a hospital to diagnose someone with COVID. Google USA Today article from the 24th of April, if it still exists. Hospitals get paid more if patients listed as COVID-19, um, if patients are listed with that. In fact, hospitals now receive $39,000 per ventilator patient and $13,000 for any COVID diagnosis. It's all about the money. It took time to get those financial incentives in place. Didn't just happen. But never mind. I could go on and on and on. It's a really long article. It's well written. It's well presented. It's well documented. And it just reminds us that we've got to stay on our toes. We've got to keep thinking. And these problems that keep us on our toes, they don't let us relax. They don't let us. There's no let up. It's consistent bombardment right now. I mean, it's there's very little difference between the information that is being pounded out right now and and planes flying overhead dropping bombs. Um, Apart from the obvious difference, right? It's still going to lead to death. Anyway, focusing on Iran for a moment. Tehran in Iran began reopening government offices Saturday after a brief nationwide lockdown to help contain the worst coronavirus outbreak in the Middle East, which has killed more than 4,300 people in the country. Authorities had ordered most government, and it's interesting that, well, let's just continue. Authorities had ordered most government agencies and all non-essential businesses to remain closed for a week after the Nowruz holiday ended on April the 4th. Government offices outside the capital Tehran reopened Saturday with two-thirds of employees coming in and the remainder working from home, the stated media reported. Women who have young children are given priority in deciding who works remotely. Businesses outside the capital were also allowed to reopen. Turns out it's not as serious as is first believed. Until the second wave comes, of course. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, Swiss authorities are what are they doing? Swiss authorities say it's now safer for children under the age of 10 to hug their grandparents in updated coronavirus guidance. Yeah, the Swiss authorities advised family members not to hug each other. I mean, how invasive can you be? I mean, it's almost like they decided, let's see how invasive we can make our rules and see how people react to it. It's a giant social experiment is what it is. Meanwhile, not everybody is going along with the mainstream principles and the mainstream ideas. Thank you to metro.co.uk who have published a lot of, I would say, groundbreaking articles recently. British professor claims that the 2-meter social distancing rule was conjured out of nowhere. Well, of course it was, because they conjure everything out of nothing, don't they? That's how they work. The gentleman in question is a sociologist called Mr. Dingwall. Well, he added, there is a certain amount of scientific evidence for a 1-meter distance which comes out of indoor studies in clinical and experimental settings, but there's never been a scientific basis for 2 meters. It's kind of a rule of thumb. Science. Is this science? Are we still talking about science here, or is this just a kind of another made-up religion. But it's not like there is a whole kind of rigorous scientific literature that it's founded upon. UK government advice currently recommends people maintain a distance of 2 meters, while the World Health Organization advises staying at least 1 meter away from others. No, 90 centimeters. No, just over a meter. Oh no, 3 feet. The WHO is assessing ongoing research in the ways COVID-19 is spread. They have no idea what they're doing. As experts debate whether tiny airborne droplets that remain in the air for minutes to hours can cause infection. They have no idea. They have no. Imagine not knowing what you're doing or talking about and saying we need to lock things down without really having evidence. And then all of the evidence compounded that we have now trying to together to try to open things back up. We've there's there's a wealth of evidence that opening things back up is absolutely necessary, and they were so quick to shut things down with no information. I mean, it's just, are people able even to process this, or have they just been worried into acquiescence? I don't know. The WHO is assessing ongoing research on the ways COVID-19 is spread. I read that. Mr. Dingwall has previously claimed the government should call off the dogs, saying he has seen no evidence at Nerve Tag, what a great company, that there is a major threat of coronavirus transmission outdoors. Did you know there was a company called Nerve Tag? Crazy, huh? Moving on, Big Pharma and corporate media finally admit oral polio vaccine is a failure. Yes, it has caused polio rather than preventing it. I'm sorry, this is just a fact. Hard to accept, but the truth is sometimes. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. The US CDC is now recognizing that there is a problem with the oral polio vaccine, which as a live virus vaccine is actually causing polio around the world. A fact reported here at Health Impact News for over 6 years now. Of course, when we or any other alternative media source report this or any other negative news about vaccines, it's labeled fake and is censored in social media. Of course it is, particularly on Facebook. If the article becomes too popular, they don't censor you unless you become influential, of course. Apparently this problem of polio being caused by the oral polio vaccine has become a problem worldwide. Right. Yep. They're in damage control mode. That's pretty much what's going on. Um, Moving on, the dailymail.co.uk prints more madness. Britons could volunteer for coronavirus to get out of the lockdown. Yeah, the British government want people to volunteer to be injected with the virus that they say is killing everybody so that they can then go back to work. I mean, could I don't I don't no, my brain can't even comment on that. It's more virtual insanity. Um, as I wrote on FB, there is something wrong with these people. There's definitely something wrong with these people. They need to be they need to be examined. They need to be self-examined. Um, Dr. Chris Hope, bringing you hope, from Cambridge University, said those who opt for voluntary exposure would then be able to resume something closer to normal life once sufficient numbers were immune and the government allowed it. This person obviously believes the government is God and nothing else exists. Frightening. How do you even, I don't even know. I don't know. It's just the product of the private schools where people don't really know what they study. It's just all initiation and indoctrination. Anyway, he said the alternative would mean young healthy Britons could suffer less than half the overall harm if they deliberately infect themselves than they would do under a continued lockdown. That makes no sense. It comes after the country's chief medical officer, Professor Chris Whitty, who's probably not very witty, warned that social distancing measures will have to remain in place for the rest of this year. Professor Whitty said the measures cannot be lifted until either a vaccine for COVID-19 or a highly effective drugs to treat the virus become available. So they're just going to stay in this forever and ever and ever, and they're just going to treat people as guinea pigs and test lots of different drugs on them. What else is going on? Bloomberg.com reported that coronavirus that lingers in the air. There's a whole bunch of scare stories being pumped out by the media. They just want complete panic. That's how I decipher it. Anyway, I'd like to thank Stephen Donovan for his rant, which I copied and pasted, which reads, Coronavirus swam the English Channel. Coronavirus killed a gazelle. Coronavirus may lead to an alien invasion. Researchers say that spiders are attracted to coronaviruses. Coronavirus is linked to male impotency and female infertility. New studies say scientists discover, researchers find, add whatever bullshit you want. Coronavirus can penetrate the soles of your shoes. Coronavirus even was found in a tiger in the Bronx Zoo. Coronavirus has been linked to rare diseases affecting infants. Whatever you want, they print whatever they want, and they just terrorize you with it endlessly. The pure madness of modern media. Excuse me while I drink more coffee. I think my voice has finally cracked it. That's it. It's definitely gone. The coronavirus appears to linger in the air in crowded spaces or rooms that lack ventilation. Basically anywhere, but it's okay to stay in place. It's okay to stay at home. Staying at home is safe. Don't go out. Don't get fresh air. Don't get sunlight. Don't take vitamin C. Don't take vitamin D. Definitely don't take intravenous vitamin C. Don't do any of that stuff that's good for you. Don't study heliotherapy. Don't take zinc, etc. Right? Don't look into light therapy. No, don't look at any of that stuff. Just stay at home. And in fact, it's probably dangerous to sleep in your bed. You should probably sleep under your bed. Just take a blanket under your bed and just crawl under there and sleep there, and you'll be fine. As long as there's no bogeyman there, right? Much madness everywhere, unavoidable. The study published in the Journal of Nature Research. That's just that. I don't know. They've got some people sitting in some dark room somewhere just coming up with the most insane articles you can possibly imagine on a daily basis, and then when they run out of pseudoscience, they ask some celebrity what everybody should do. Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of it. Which reminds me, if you're watching the video version, that I really need to do the lessons for my kids' presentation, which is practical, useful things for families. I've got to do that. It's probably going to slip my mind. Somebody should remind me. I should write a note for myself. Note to self. Lessons for kids. Record that. There we go. That'll be useful. Super cool. Make notes. Make notes as you go along. It's always useful and helpful. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is G. I represent the Academy. You can find me under Graham William Hendry on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. It's the Academy of Language Therapy and Life Coaching. Over 2,500 videos on YouTube while the YouTube channel remains up. If you've got articles, send them to me. I'll have a look at them. If you want to contradict what I've presented, that's fine. Just send the information to me. Let me know. Otherwise, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I wish you a fantastic day. Make sure to spend some time with your family, and don't forget to tell the ones that you love them. That's all I've got time for today. The voice is completely shot, and I will now only be able to get a job as a late night radio DJ, I think. There we go. Yeah, stay cool, guys. More information soon. Let's fight the good fight. We'll get through it together for sure. Take care.